New York is, as you said, full of unbelievable engineering genius and unbelievable creativity, only some of which actually appears in the city today, because some of that creativity either never came to fruition or came to fruition and is now forgotten. What are the great pieces of missing genius that we no longer see in the city around us?
Well, there was a number of people who set out to solve New York's mobility problem. Once we had this huge waves of immigration, the Industrial Revolution, you had congestion everywhere. And so there was a number of people that came up with somewhat crazy ideas for how to move people from one part of New York, everything from hot air balloons to other things. But one of the crazier was a guy named Alfred Beach, who decided he was going to actually move people underground, which nobody was keen to see him do because the streetcars and the horse cars had a monopoly. So what he did, crazy typical New Yorker, he went ahead and got a license to develop a freight connection underground to move parcels from point A to point B in Lower Manhattan. It was down on Lower Broadway, and went ahead and built a vacuum tube that in theory was going to move parcels, but actually was going to move people. And he built these amazing subway cars that were gorgeous, fancy with flowers and wood seats and oriental carpets. And he opened it in, I want to say 1869, somewhere around there, and he ran it for 2 or 3 years, and people would pay literally to move 2 blocks in Lower Manhattan. But the amazing thing is, it was a vacuum tube. They were blown from one station in this capsule to another, and they thought it was the most wonderful thing. Now, he had a lot of opposition from people up above because they didn't want to lose their franchises or their monopolies on whatever was going up on street level, and so they militated against giving him this permit to run in perpetuity. And then, of course, there was a sort of downturn in the economy in 1873, and that put an end to Alfred Beach. But there have been people like that who have tried these amazing, crazy things, many of which have not worked. You have entrepreneurs today that just started ferries going around the harbor. Now, ferries last plied the harbor in 1967. That was the last real serious transportation commuter ferry, other than the Staten Island ferry, which is publicly subsidized. And then in, I would say, the late 80s, folks decided everything else was so congested, we'll run ferries from the Palisades in New Jersey over to the World Trade Center, World Financial Center, and started running ferries. And now they're going, great guns. And the city's actually instituting a new ferry on the East River, and they're expanding it to a series of other locations. So that's our newest form of transportation, which actually is our oldest, which means that nothing is linear in New York. Everything is somewhat circular.
What will happen in the next 30 or 40 years to New York's infrastructure? How will this change? Will we manage to maintain it? Will we do new and exciting things? What about the railroad in Brooklyn that people are talking about?
Yeah, I think we're doing a variety of things. I think there's things like the railroad in Brooklyn, which the overland trolley car, which is is okay. I'm not sure it's going to lead to any new central business districts over there. I think that's being done for different reasons. I think you will see a strengthening of Midtown as a commercial hub because of the new zoning that's going to allow us to take down some of the older buildings. And I don't mean us, I mean developers will be encouraged to do that. You hopefully will see some activity around Penn Station when Moynihan comes on and when the new plans for Penn Station move forward. And then there are areas of New York that are just ripe for redevelopment. 125th and Park, which is the first stop as you go north, is where the 2nd Avenue subway is going to terminate. So the phase that will begin to be studied next year, early next year, is 96th Street to 125th. That will actually end where Cornelius Vanderbilt's trains go. So you begin to see a real transport hub, a Grand Central North that doesn't exist today. That will happen. And so will several others in the outer boroughs, just because of the way we're thinking about transit and development in this very integrated way and encouraging it through zoning and through other sorts of actions. So I think the transportation infrastructure and other forms of infrastructure will actually be strengthened over the next period of time. The new water tunnel is happening. It will be open. What happens, the sewers, that's still a work in progress. We're doing a lot of green infrastructure to try to minimize the impact of, sea level rise and climate change on our sewer system, but there's been a huge amount of investment there too. So I think the story is finally a good one. I think we're on the up and up, but we will now move forward. So I think it's a reasonably upbeat story.